Welcome to Alien's Shadow. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for thrilling HFY adventures. Join us and be part of the journey. The compliment that changed everything. Jace stood at the edge of the alien plaza, staring up at the towering Thraxian structures around him. The buildings were shaped like sharp claws, reaching into the orange sky of Drakkar, the homeworld of the Giantess warrior. Racy adjusted the collar of his formal suit, trying not to sweat. But the two suns weren't helping around him. Humans and Thraxians mingled for the diplomatic unity event, each group eyeing the other with a mix of curiosity and tension. Jace was just an engineer, not a diplomat, but his expertise in alien tech made him part of the human team. He was told to observe, be quiet, and not offend anyone, especially not the Thraxian leaders. Then she arrived, Valari. The Thraxian Queen General stepped onto the platform. She was over 12 feet tall, covered in gleaming dark blue armor, etched with war symbols. Her long white braid swung behind her like a weapon, and her sharp golden eyes scanned the crowd like a hunter. The plaza went silent, and Jace, for a moment, forgot to breathe. She was terrifying, but she was also breathtaking. He whispered to no one in particular, "Wow, she's got strong posture, like really beautiful posture." A few nearby Thraxians gasped. Their heads snapped toward him like animals spotting prey. Jace blinked, confused, until one of the human diplomats slowly turned toward him. "Pale, what did you just say?" The man whispered, voice shaking. I just said she's got strong posture." Jace answered, confused. "Why?" Before anyone could explain, Valari's attention locked onto him. She strode forward like thunder on legs, every step making the ground vibrate under Jace's boots. He instinctively took a step back, raising his hands. "Sorry, did I say something wrong?" he asked, voice cracking. Valari didn't answer at first. Instead, she looked him up and down, eyes narrowing with curiosity. Then she raised her voice for all to hear. "This human honors me with the sacred proposal of strength and beauty." The crowd exploded into cheers, and Jace's blood froze. "What?" he mumbled. "Proposal, human," Valari called, now standing directly in front of him, towering over him like a living mountain. "Your words bind you, and I accept your offer." "I didn't make an offer," he shouted in panic, but it was too late. Thraxian guards flanked him on both sides, bowing with respect as they gently pushed him forward. The human diplomats tried to stop them, but Thraxian law was absolute in their territory. Jace was led into a ceremonial vehicle shaped like a roaring beast and taken to the royal warship. He sat in silence, heart pounding, surrounded by giant alien warriors whispering and grinning at him. He leaned toward the one closest to him. "What just happened?" he asked, voice trembling. "You complimented her armor and stance," the warrior said calmly. "That's a courtship declaration in our language." No, Jace whispered, pressing his hands to his face. "I was just admiring the armor she accepted," the warrior added. "She believes you see her strength, her honor, and her beauty. I was just trying to be polite." The warrior nodded solemnly. "That is the most polite way to ask for union." The warship doors opened with a heavy hiss, and Jace was guided into a grand chamber filled with glowing alien symbols. Valari stood waiting, arms crossed, her smile a mix of amusement and hunger. "You do not look ready," she said with a grin. "I didn't know I was getting married today," Jace muttered under his breath. She walked toward him and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Human, your spirit is strange and bold," she said. "I like it. I don't even know what to call this situation," Jace said, trying to laugh, but it came out shaky. "You call it destiny," she answered without hesitation. A massive throne rose behind her, carved from black stone. And she gestured for him to sit beside her. The entire ship crew knelt in silence as she declared, "This human Jace of Earth is now my chosen mate." Jace sat frozen, eyes wide, hands sweating, as the echoes of her words filled the chamber outside the window. The twin suns of Drakkar glowed bright over the horizon. Inside, Jace realized one simple compliment had just rewritten his entire life. And there was no going back. The Giantess Queen's demands. Jace sat in stunned silence as Valari led him deeper into the massive warship. The hallways were built for giants, every ceiling arching high above his head. Strange glowing runes pulsed on the walls like the heartbeat of a living creature. His boots echoed on the metallic floor as he followed the Giantess. Unsure if he was walking to his new room or a cage, Valari didn't look back. She moved like a queen who never questioned her path, her shoulders broad, her stride strong, her presence impossible to ignore. Jace kept staring at the back of her white braid, wondering how he ended up in this situation by saying something as simple as nice posture. They reached a wide chamber lit with soft blue light. Warm and quiet, the door sealed behind them, cutting off the noise of the ship outside. Valari turned to face him and finally spoke, her voice low and firm. "Sit, human. We must speak of your duty." Jace blinked and slowly sat on a wide-cushioned bench that felt more like a throne to someone his size. "Look, I think there's a misunderstanding," he said carefully. "I wasn't trying to court you or anything." Valari stepped closer and tilted her head, her golden eyes glowing. "In your culture, do males not speak honor to females when they see strength?" she asked. Jace rubbed his face with one hand, sighing, "Yeah, we do, sometimes, but it's not always romantic." She crouched in front of him, her face now level with his. "Among my people, your words are sacred," she said, to compliment. "A warrior's strength is to offer partnership, protection, and the promise of legacy." Jace swallowed hard and nodded slowly. "Okay, I get that now, but I didn't know. I swear." Valari studied him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You did not intend the offer. Yet your spirit speaks louder than your mouth." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Wait, are you saying I accidentally passed some kind of test?" She stood and began to remove parts of her armor, revealing more of her thick, battle-scarred skin. Jace's eyes widened as he quickly turned his head. Whoa, what are you doing?" She laughed, the sound deep and surprisingly warm. "I am preparing to begin the mating assessment," she said. "You will be examined by the Honor Council at dawn." "Mating what?" Jace yelped, standing up. "There's got to be some way out of this, right?" Valari crossed her arms, not angry, just firm. "You may refuse," she said. "But to do so would shame both you and me before my people." She paused, then added with rare softness, "But I would not force you." "Even if I could," Jace exhaled slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked around the chamber, alien symbols, heavy weapons, and yet a soft bed shaped like a shallow crater. He wasn't a soldier or a hero, just an engineer from Earth. And now he was being prepped to father a child with a woman twice his size who thought he was brave. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of two female Thoraxians entering the room. One held a silver staff. The other carried a scroll with golden seals. They bowed deeply to Valari and then looked at Jace with curiosity and hunger. "This is the pre-assessment," Valari explained. "They will measure your health, spirit, and capacity." "Capacity?" Jace asked, voice rising again. "They will not harm you," she said calmly. "Only evaluate." The staff glowed as it passed over his chest, arms, and legs, sending soft tingles through his muscles. The scroll recorded his body temperature, pulse, and something written in strange alien glyphs. Jace stood awkwardly in the center, while the towering women walked circles around him. Nodding in approval, one of them smiled and whispered something to Valari, who chuckled. He is small, but his inner fire burns hot. She translated. Jace rubbed his temples. This has to be the weirdest performance review of my life. When the exam was over, the two women bowed again and left without a word. Valari stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Jace's shoulder. You are not what I expected, she said, but you may be what our future needs. Jace looked up at her, stunned into silence. For the first time, she didn't seem like a monster or a captor. She looked like a woman carrying the weight of an empire alone, and for reasons he couldn't explain, part of him didn't want to run anymore. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was pride, or maybe it was something else entirely. Valari reached for his hand and held it in her massive fingers. You have until dawn to decide, she said. If you walk away, you will be honored, but free. But if you stay, she added, you will belong to me, and I to you. Jace sat back down slowly. Eyes locked on the stars visible through the window. His breath was shaky, but his mind was clear. He had 12 hours to make the most important choice of his life. The trial of compatibility, the morning air inside the Thraxian warship, was heavy with silence. Jace stood in front of a towering double door, his body freshly cleaned, his hair slicked back. Wearing ceremonial robes made from soft alien fabric, his stomach twisted in nervous knots as he stared at the carved symbols above the entrance. They told the story of unity through challenge, strength through struggle, and love proven in battle. He wasn't sure if this was a wedding, a trial, or some ancient alien version of speed dating with swords. All he knew was that if he stepped through those doors, there would be no turning back. Valari had told him that last night with a calm voice and intense eyes. No Thraxian can mate without proving balance between heart, courage, and body, she had said. The doors opened with a slow hiss, revealing a wide arena lit by glowing pillars and surrounded by thousands of Thraxian eyes. Every seat was filled with warriors, council members, and observers eager to witness the trial of the strange human. Jace stepped into the center of the arena, heart pounding, palms sweating. In front of him stood his opponent. She was at least 11 feet tall, covered in thick crimson armor, with black war paint streaked across her face. Her name was Zaytira, Terra's cousin, and one of the strongest champions in the royal bloodline. She held a long staff in one hand and cracked her neck slowly. Never taking her eyes off him, she volunteered. Valari's voice echoed from above. Seated high in the throne booth, if you can last 10 minutes without yielding, you prove your worth. Jace blinked up at her. 10 minutes. He whispered under his breath, that's it. Then the horn sounded. Zaytira moved fast, too fast for her size. Jace barely rolled away as her staff slammed into the ground where he'd stood. The impact sent dust and energy flying in every direction. He scrambled to his feet and raised his own Wapana, practice staff designed for defense. He wasn't allowed to fight to win, only to survive and adapt. He tried to think, to remember his training. To stay low and use speed, not strength. Zaytira circled him with a predator's grace. Her staff spinning, her eyes sharp, she struck again. And Jace blocked it, barely, the force sending pain up his arms. He staggered back, then rolled again, dodging a sweeping blow that would have cracked his ribs. The crowd watched silently at first, then slowly began to murmur. This human didn't run, didn't cry, didn't beg. He fought clumsy. Yes, but he didn't stop moving. Jace found a rhythm. Tease found a rhythm. Ducking and sidestepping, using the arena's structure to avoid straight attacks. Every breath burned, every muscle ached, but he held on. He started to use his brain, predicting her attacks. Blocking smarter, not harder. Zaytira smiled suddenly, a warrior's grin, and struck with new energy. Jace tripped and fell, his staff clattering away. She raised her weapon for the final strike, but then she paused. Jace didn't cover his head, didn't scream. He just raised his arms and shouted, "Do it! If that's what it takes." Zatira blinked, stunned, then laughed. She slammed her staff into the ground beside him, not on him. She reached down, grabbed his arm, and pulled him to his feet with ease. The horn sounded again. And the trial ended. The crowd roared. Valari stood from her throne, her eyes wide with pride. He did not yield, she declared. He stood with courage and reason. Jace leaned on Zatira for balance, gasping for air. "You hit hard." He wheezed. She grinned. "You lasted longer than half the males in this hall." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a painful cough. Temetics approached and scanned him with healing lights. His bruises faded slowly, and his vision cleared. Valari descended into the arena, her cape flowing behind her like liquid silver. She stood before him, taller than ever, and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are now more than a guest," she said. "You are a proven match." Jace looked up at her and saw something strange in her face. Respect. Maybe even admiration. And for the first time since arriving on this planet, he didn't feel small. He felt like he belonged. As the crowd continued to cheer, Valari leaned down and whispered into his ear, "You have passed the test, but the real union begins now." Jace nodded, still breathless. "I guess this is the part where I stop pretending I'm just an engineer." Valari smiled and helped him walk. "No, this is the part where you become something greater." Together, they stepped out of the arena, leaving behind the echo of a battle that had changed everything. A deal between giants and men. Jace sat at a long stone table, his legs dangling above the floor, surrounded by a council of towering Thraxian leaders. He felt like a child sitting among ancient titans. The hall was quiet, filled with the scent of burning herbs and the soft hum of glowing symbols on the walls. Valari stood behind him, arms folded, watching the faces of her people as they studied the human she had chosen. Each Thraxian counselor was taller than the last, armored in ceremonial robes and glowing tattoos of status and lineage. One leaned forward, her voice like grinding stone. "He is small but clever." Another nodded. "He faced Zatira and survived." Jace shifted in his seat, clearing his throat. Thank you, I think." Valari stepped forward, her voice powerful and smooth. "He has passed the trial of will, and I claim him before this council as my bonded match." A few murmurs filled the room, not of rejection, but of surprise and curiosity. They had never seen a Thraxian queen select a human before. Then a third elder raised a hand, silencing the room. "If this is your choice, Valari, then tradition must be followed," she said. "The bonding must produce an heir to be fully sealed." Jace's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Valari looked down at him, calm but serious. "In our law, union must result in legacy," she said. "One heir, to carry the blood of both houses, to bind our future." Jace ran his hands through his hair, standing up from his tool-large chair. "Okay, look, I'm just an engineer from Earth," he said. "I never planned to be part of anyone's royal bloodline." He turned to Valari, trying not to sound disrespectful. "This whole thing happened because I said you had good posture." She smiled slightly at that. Yes, and that compliment might unite two worlds. Jace walked to the edge of the room, looking out through the tall windows. The planet below was glowing with firelit clouds and towering trees. It was beautiful, dangerous, and nothing like home. He turned back toward the council, voice steady but unsure. "What if I say no to the heir part?" The room became still. One warrior rose slightly from her chair, but Valari raised a hand, stopping her. "You may refuse," she said gently. "No force will touch you." "Jace, not by my hand or theirs." But, she added, her eyes locked. On his, if you walk away, our bond will be broken, and I will return to solitude, to the endless chain of choosing and testing. Jace looked at her and saw more than armor and pride. He saw a woman worn from carrying duty alone, a leader. Respected but lonely, strong but tired. I'm not sure I'm ready to be a father, he said honestly. I'm not even sure I know how to be a partner to someone like you. Valari stepped closer, her voice softer than ever. Then start by being yourself, she said. Share meals with me, walk beside me, speak your mind, Jace felt. A strange warmth in his chest. No one had ever asked him to just be himself. Not like this, especially not someone so powerful. He nodded slowly. All right, he said, I'll stay. A soft gasp moved through the room, and the council elder raised her hand again. Then let it be recorded, she said. The human has accepted his path. Ceremonial drums began to beat in the distance, and Valari turned to Jace with a fire in her eyes. Tomorrow begins the preparation, she said. You will learn our ways, our songs, our meaning. Jace rubbed the back of his neck and gave a weak smile. Songs? He asked. We sing to honor new life, she answered. It is how our ancestors watch us. As they walked out of the council hall, side by side, Jace glanced up at her. So this air thing, he said carefully. It's not just idology. Right? Valari smirked. No, she said. It is legacy, unity, and trust. But she added with a wink, biology does play a role. Jace laughed nervously. Of course it does. That night, he stood on a balcony overlooking the alien world. Stars filled the sky like shattered glass, and the wind carried the scent of heat and stone. He wasn't sure where this path was taking him. But it was no longer about escaping. He had made a deal not just with a queen, but with a future he never expected. When honor becomes desire. Jace awoke to the soft sound of drums echoing through the walls of the royal tower. He stretched and looked around the enormous chamber. His bed big enough to hold 6 of him. The room was filled with carved stone pillars, glowing crystal lights, and strange alien cloth hanging from the ceiling like banners. A new robe had been left for him, woven with silver threads and dark blue symbols of the Thraxian crest. He put it on and stepped outside to find Valari, already waiting. She wore her ceremonial armor, polished to shine under the morning light. But her helmet rested at her side. Her long braid was tied tighter than usual, her expression unreadable. Come, she said simply. And together they began walking through the royal courtyard. They passed warriors training with massive hammers, elders teaching younglings to chant old battle songs, and architects carving new halls. Jace had never seen a society so alive, so proud of their strength and yet full of culture. As they walked, the Thraxians bowed to Valari, then glanced at Jace with curiosity and soft laughter. He tried to walk tall, even if his legs felt like jelly. Valari spoke without looking at him. They admire you, not for your size, but for your spirit. Jace chuckled nervously. Well, I admire them too, especially the ones not trying to break my bones. She smirked and stopped near a fountain made of dark stone and glowing water. This is where our ancestors speak to us, she said. Today, we speak to them. Jace followed her lead, kneeling beside the fountain, unsure of the ritual. Valari reached into the water and pulled out a smooth, glowing crystal. She held it to her chest, then offered it to him. He took it with both hands, and for a moment it pulsed gently with heat. The water shimmered, and voices whispered from deep below, not in words, but in emotions, curiosity, strength, and something like acceptance. Valari's voice lowered. You've earned a place among my people. But you still carry fear. Jace nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. This is all so fast. She turned to face him, her face softer now. I do not ask you to become Thraxian overnight, she said, "but I do ask for honesty. Not just in words, but in heart." Jace looked up at her, this towering warrior queen who could crush him with one hand. Yet here she was, sharing tradition, speaking gently, offering trust. "I'm scared because I don't know how to be enough for you," he admitted. "I'm just me, and you're you." Valari leaned closer, her golden eyes locked on his. "I do not want a man who is like me," she said. "I want one who makes me feel like more than what I've always been." They sat in silence as the wind brushed through the open courtyard. Then, without thinking, Jace reached out and placed his hand over hers. Her skin was rough from years of battle, but it was warm. She did not pull away. Later that evening, the palace echoed with music and laughter. A celebration feast had been prepared, part to honor Jace and part to honor the bond that was growing between them. Valari sat beside him at the long table, watching as he tried alien fruits and nearly choked on a sour purple orb. She laughed for the first time all day, and the sound made the room feel less heavy. They danced, slowly at first, his feet clumsy against the rhythm, but Valari held his hand, her giant fingers wrapped gently around his. "You move like a warrior duckling," she said. Jace laughed and bowed. "I'll take that as a compliment." The night grew deeper and the lights dimmed. Jace and Valari walked alone through the moonlit garden, their hands still touching. She stopped under a glowing tree with golden leaves and looked down at him. "I asked you for duty, and you've given me something greater," she said. "You've given me peace." Jace's heart thudded in his chest as he met her eyes. He saw not just power, but vulnerability. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Valari, I want to do this. Not because I have to, but because I want to." She leaned down slowly, and their lips met in a kiss that was both soft and filled with promise. It was not a claim, not a command, but a beginning. A spark lit between two souls from two worlds, no longer bound by fear, but drawn by choice. As the stars turned above them, Jace knew that honor had become desire, and desire had become something far deeper. The first of a new kind, the sky above. Draka was dark and bruised, filled with smoke and fire trails from burning ships. Alarms echoed across the capital as the Thraxian warships scrambled to respond to a surprise raid at the outer colonies. Valari stood on the edge of a command balcony, shouting orders to her fleet captains, her voice steady and sharp like a blade. Her golden eyes blazed with fury as she pointed to the holographic map, directing ships into formation. Jace watched from a distance, standing beside the communication deck. Kay had never seen her like this, commanding, fierce, glowing with pure warrior energy. This wasn't the gentlewoman who shared a kiss under moonlit leaves. This was the battle-forged queen who once broke enemy skulls with her bare hands. But then the call came. A rogue vessel had bypassed defenses and fired on a civilian shuttle near the southern district. And Valari was on that shuttle just an hour ago, returning from a council meet with Jace. The fear in the officers' voices cut through the room like static. "Target confirmed hit. Possible queen casualty," one officer said, voice trembling. Jace didn't wait. He ran, shoving past warriors, climbing into a scout bike, and launching off the side ramp. He had no armor, no plan, and no permission. Just one thought: Treacher. The ride through the burning skies was wild and deafening. Jace dodged falling debris, missiles streaking through clouds, and crashing fighters. He followed the emergency signal, locked on the wreckage site, and landed hard in a cracked plaza. The shuttle was in ruins, smoke rising like a funeral flame. Bodies lay around, some moving, some not. He sprinted through the debris, calling her name, heart hammering like a drum. In his ears, then he found her. Valari was pinned under part of the shuttle frame, bleeding from her side, eyes half open. She looked up at him and smiled weakly. "You came," she whispered. Jace dropped beside her and tried to lift the metal. It wouldn't budge. "Hold on," he said, choking back panic. "I'm going to get you out." She reached up and touched his face. "You are not built for war," she murmured. "Yet here you are." "You told me I'm your mate," he replied, voice shaking. "That makes your war mine too." With a roar, he pulled at the metal again, using broken rods as leverage. Other Thraxians arrived, pulling with him until the frame lifted just enough. Valari was pulled free, her body weak but alive. Later that night, the palace was silent. Jace sat beside her in the healing chamber, watching her sleep as a machine repaired the internal damage. Her fingers twitched slightly, and he held her hand gently when her eyes finally opened again. The first word she whispered was his name. He leaned closer, smiling through tired eyes. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. She nodded faintly. "You saved your queen," she said. "You earned your title." "What title?" he asked. She squeezed his hand, protector of the line. She said, "Father of the future." Days passed, and Valari slowly recovered. The war raid was repelled, and peace settled back into the capital. But something had changed. Something new had been born not from blood, but from choice. The council honored Jace in a public ceremony. He stood beside Valari on the royal steps as crowds roared his name. Not as a guest, not as a stranger, but as one of their own, when the time came. He and Valari stood again at the fountain of their ancestors. Only this time, they weren't alone, in her arms. Valari held a small bundle wrapped in woven silk. Inside was the first Thraxian human child, a baby with dark hair, golden eyes, and fingers that curled around Jace's thumb with impossible strength. The crowd stared in awe, not with fear, but with wonder. This was the future, the bridge between two worlds. This was the first of a new kind. Jace looked down at the child and then up at Valari. "Do you think they'll accept her?" he asked. Valari smiled. "They will have no choice," she said. "She is ours, and together." They lifted their child toward the sky, under the twin suns of Drakkar. A new legacy had begun. Not with war, not with fear, but with one awkward compliment, a trial by fire, and a bond that no one could break. The human who tamed a queen, *, the Grand Plaza of Drakkar was filled with voices, music, and rising banners that painted the sky with color. Thousands of Thraxians gathered shoulder to shoulder, their armored chests raised in pride and awe. They weren't preparing for battle today. They were celebrating the first shared coronation in their planet's history. At the heart of it stood Jace, dressed in dark royal robes stitched with symbols of both Earth and Thraxian honor. Beside him towered Valari in gleaming ceremonial armor with her long braid wrapped in golden rings. In her arms, she held their daughter, wrapped in silken cloth marked with both their bloodlines. The child yawned softly, her golden eyes blinking beneath the suns. Unaware of the history unfolding around her, Jace looked out over the crowd, his heart thudding, not with fear, but with gratitude. Just months ago, he was a forgotten engineer on a diplomatic mission. Now he stood as a mate to a queen, father to a child, and bridge between two species. Elder Zatira stepped forward and raised a ceremonial horn carved from the tusk of a mountain beast. "In the name of our ancestors," she called, "and in honor of the bond no war could break, we name this day the birth of unity." The crowd erupted in cheers. Drums echoed across the canyon cities, and bells rang from the towers above. Valari turned to Jace and placed the child in his arms. She smiled and nodded. "Take her," she said softly. "Let them see who you are now." Jace stepped forward with careful hands. Holding their daughter high, he spoke with a clear voice, amplified by the ceremonial glyph etched into the air. "This is no longer just my story or hers," he said. "This is our story, our future, our beginning. The Thraxians known for being cold and proud now clapped with force that shook the stone underfoot. They no longer saw Jace as fragile or strange. They saw him as one of their own. Later that day, the couple walked through the temple garden where the fountain still shimmered with crystal waters. It had become their place, a quiet space away from the throne, where titles didn't matter. Jace sat on a stone bench, their child asleep in his arms, and Valari beside him in soft robes instead of armor. "I still remember the moment you called me out in the plaza," he said, smiling. "You looked like you were going to crush me." Valari chuckled low. "I was confused, not angry," she replied. "No one had ever spoken to me like that." Jace leaned back, watching the sunlight ripple on the water. "I think I was more scared of you than of anything else in the galaxy," he admitted. "But now," he added, "you're the reason I feel safe." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Gentle and steady, and you," she said, "are the reason I feel whole." They sat there as the wind rustled the leaves of golden trees and strange alien birds chirped overhead. Valari reached over and took her child into her arms again, rocking gently. "She has your stubborn grip," she said. Jace grinned. "Just wait until she starts talking." The palace had changed too, longer a place of just war strategy and tradition. It now had chambers for learning Earth languages, rooms decorated with mixed art, and even a garden with earth flowers brought through trade. The blending of two worlds had begun, not by treaties, but by trust and choice. Jace trained daily with the Royal Guard, not to fight, but to understand. He taught them about human technology, strategy, and how to fix things without explosives. They called him Soft Hands, a name once meant as a joke, but now spoken with respect. One evening, as the stars rose across the alien sky, Jace stood with Valari on the palace balcony. The child was asleep, and the city lights glowed beneath them like a field of fireflies. "You could have ruled without me," Jace said quietly. Valari turned to him, her voice firm and clear. "But I would have ruled alone," she said, "and I was tired of being alone." He took her hand, feeling the rough skin of a warrior who had never known softness until him. "And now?" he asked. "Now?" she whispered. "I am stronger because I have something to protect." Jace leaned against her, watching the stars rise over the dark mountains. He smiled, remembering the moment he said beautiful posture and changed his life. He had no regrets. The human who tamed a queen didn't do it with a sword. He did it with respect, with courage, and with heart. And now, his name would live in two histories, one of Earth and one of Drakkar.